Good evening. Welcome to the Bellevue City Council regular meeting for July 15th. Whew, I jumped to July 15th, 2025. Before we begin, I need a motion to excuse Councilmember Neuenhuis from our meeting tonight.
I move to excuse Councilmember Neuenhuis from tonight's meeting.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, can we do roll call, please?
Thank you. Mayor Robinson?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Malakoutia?
Here.
Councilmember Bhargava?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Lee?
Here.
Councilmember Suma-Deworia?
Here.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, would you please lead us in the flag salute?
Absolutely. Please rise. I pledge allegiance
To the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we have one proclamation tonight, pretrial probation and parole supervision week, which will be read by Councilmember Hamilton and received by the Honorable and Venerable Lisa O'Toole, East Division Presiding Judge, King County District Court, and Craig Fritz, Probation Manager for Parks and Community Services. So why don't you go ahead and come on up, and we'll have Councilmember Hamilton read the proclamation.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas probation services are an essential part of the justice system, enhancing public safety by supervising individuals charged with misdemeanors in Bellevue and providing an alternative to incarceration that enables clients to maintain meaningful connections with their families and communities. And whereas probation services are a proven tool for reducing recidivism by identifying client needs and risk factors, and by positively influencing behavior through role modeling, collaborative problem solving, and targeted programming. And whereas in 2024, the City of Bellevue's Probation Division supported 2,280 clients through professional staff who believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every individual, offering services, programs, and referrals that promote personal growth and accountability. And whereas probation services professionals form strong partnerships with community organizations to help address the root causes of client behavior, thereby reducing the likelihood of future justice system involvement. And whereas probation services professionals advocate for community and restorative justice, working to support marginalized residents and advancing equitable outcomes. And whereas by incorporating trauma-informed practices, probation professionals prioritize relationships and empathy in their client interactions, which improves outcomes and fosters long-term change. And whereas probation services professionals apply an equity lens to their work, using translation and interpretation services to ensure accessibility and tracking data to monitor fairness in client outcomes. And whereas probation services professionals serve as agents of positive change in the community. Now, therefore, I, Dave Hamilton, on behalf of Lynn Robinson, Mayor of the City of Bellevue, Washington, and on behalf of its City Council, do hereby proclaim July 20th through 26th, 2025 as pretrial, probation, and parole supervision week in Bellevue, Washington, and encourage all residents to honor these probation professionals and recognize the vital services they provide to our community.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm Judge Lisa O'Toole. I'm the East Division Presiding Judge for King County District Court, and I've also had the honor of serving in the Bellevue Courthouse for the last 10 years. And I want to thank our Bellevue City Council for recognizing our Bellevue Probation Department during National Probation Week. And I want to give you a little insight into Bellevue Probation. So, of course, our Bellevue Probation team helps judges by being our eyes and our ears once we've imposed a sentence. The probation team certainly monitors whether people comply with the terms of their sentence and whether they whether they reoffend, but that's really just a small portion of what it is they do. In reality, what our Bellevue probation team does is offer people hope. That belief that their future will be better than today and that they have the power to make that happen. And our probation team enables people to see themselves in that better future. So our probation team strives to establish positive relationships and rapport with each client. They establish trust and solid working relationships. They help probationers on their journeys to sobriety, to stable housing, and to meaningful employment. At each turn, our probation officers offer guidance, they offer support, and they offer hope. Each member of our Bellevue probation team truly has a meaningful impact on the lives of their clients, and they help set those probationers on a path to improve every aspect of their lives by giving them confidence and the tools to see themselves in that better future. Our probation team helps restore probationers' sense of self-worth and self-esteem and instills hope. And it's the powerful impact that this has that can be truly transformative on a probationer's life. And it is this work that Bellevue Probation is called to do. And our probation team changes lives for the better and makes our community a better place and a safer place for all of us. So thank you to the probation team for the work that they do. I'm honored to work with them, and thank the Bellevue City Council for recognizing the important role that Bellevue Probation plays in our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Judge O'Toole. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members. I want to personally thank you for your recognition and support of the City of Bellevue Probation Division and for your acknowledgement of the great work of our probation professionals. The City of Bellevue has operated its own probation division since 1972, providing a holistic approach to client accountability and support services. These services are an essential part of the justice system, ensuring effective supervision of individuals and providing an alternative to incarceration that allows clients to maintain constructive ties to their families and to their communities. Probation supports the city's community safety and health strategic target area, ensuring that all people feel safe, valued, and welcomed. Our team at probation includes a range of committed professionals with more than 235 years of combined experience in the field of both probation and community corrections. Our location at the courthouse provides clients with direct access to their probation officers and the services that we offer. We offer electronic home monitoring, work crew, programming, and just this year, or over the past year, I should say, we've taken meaningful and successful steps to expand our program offerings in direct response to the evolving needs of the clients that we serve. Our work lives at the intersection of human services and justice. By holding individuals accountable while helping them address root causes such as housing instability, mental health challenges, substance use disorders, we help create healthier and safer communities. The level of support and accountability also has led to a relatively low recidivism rate amongst our clients, which in turn supports the safety and well-being of the entire community. So in closing, I want to share that the national theme for this year, is Heroes Behind the Mission, Transforming Lives, Enhancing Public Safety. The theme recognizes the essential role community corrections and probation professionals play, not just in supervision, but in guiding people towards stability, accountability, and change. They are often the unsung heroes of our justice system, working quietly, persistently, and with great compassion to enhance public safety, to ensure accountability, and to support change and growth. They are not often in the spotlight, but their impact is lasting. Each day, they walk alongside individuals at some of the most difficult points in their lives, offering guidance, opportunity, and structure. And in doing so, they don't just supervise, they help to transform. So again, thank you to all of you for your continued advocacy and support for all we do in the probation division and for the positive impacts this has on Bellevue's public safety.
Great, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Let's do a picture, shall we? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, next up, we have oral communications. Do we have anybody signed up tonight?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, there are 5 pre-registered speakers this evening. So before I start calling names, I'll go over a few of the rules that the council has in place. So the total time for oral communications is not to exceed 30 minutes, and all topics must relate to City of Bellevue government. People speaking to items on tonight's agenda will be called first, and then if time remains, people speaking to items not on tonight's agenda will be called. The presiding officer in both of those categories is authorized to give preference to those who have not spoken to council within the last 60 days or who will be speaking on items that will come in front of the council within the next 60 days. Each speaker is allowed to speak up to 3 minutes, and only 3 people are allowed to speak to any one side of a particular topic. Also, I want to remind folks that in compliance with Washington state campaign laws regarding the use of public facilities during elections, no speaker may support or oppose a ballot measure or support or oppose a candidate for an election, which includes one's own campaign. So any speaker beginning to discuss those topics will be asked to stop. So with that, I will call our first speaker, who is Mark Huntelman.
Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Malkushin, and Council. My name is Mark Huntelman. I live in Lake Hills. I am speaking against Ordinance 6853 on the agenda tonight. Ordinance 6853 is not ordinary or business as usual.
Sir, I am so sorry. I've paused your time, but if
Yes.
I could have you scoot a little bit closer to the microphone, we are not picking up your audio. Thank you.
I'm going to switch microphone. Okay. Should I start again?
You can just continue.
Okay, thank you. Ordinance 6853 is not ordinary or business as usual. It extends by 6 months old law after the passing of new law. I would like to comment on 2 differences between the old and the new as mentioned in the ordinance. First, we are in the turn of a business cycle, and businesses must calculate cost. But we are always in the turn of a business cycle, up or down, and businesses always calculate cost. Costs are business as usual. Business cycles are ordinary. Please do not delay law because business cycles exist. Second, Council recently passed a significant new ordinance with its own effective date. Ordinance 6853 negates this date, replacing it with one 6 months out. which leaves some developers able to choose which law they would like to follow, the old or the new. And for a few lucky few, a full year to clear under the old law and build under the new. Granted, some days I would like to have that kind of choice. But please keep us all under one law at a time by rejecting this ordinance. Ordinance 6853 is not a one-time reaction to unusual conditions. It is now an annual and extraordinary accommodation in the face of the ordinary. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is John Zulanis.
You can hear me? Okay. Hello, esteemed council members. My name is John Zulanis. I both live and work here in Bellevue, and I'm here to testify in support of Safe Bellevue. Since moving here 3 years ago, I've traveled over 4,000 miles on my bike. It's replaced the majority of my transportation needs, commuting to work, picking up groceries, going to events, meeting friends. You get the idea. Since moving here, I've been near missed on 6 separate occasions in Bellevue, where cars have come within 2 feet of me. And if you want a demonstration of how close that is, put 1 foot in front of the other, and that's how close a car has come to colliding with me on my bike. Not with any good reason either. Trying to make a light a little sooner, thinking I was moving too slow on a turn, refusing to pass me on a 2-lane road. Or some just weren't paying attention. And on one specific occasion, a car exited a driveway on 156 and knocked me over and drove off without stopping. And I know that there's been efforts made to go and include bike lanes through the city. I'm thankful the bike lanes have been given space, that some have been painted green for visibility. But as far as I'm concerned, paint doesn't protect me. Paint is not infrastructure. On my birthday last year, a driver actively tried to run me off the road twice by veering into the bike lane while I was trying to pass them. I was visible and loud, made myself known, and paint did nothing. Made no difference. In 2024, 36 people were either seriously injured or killed on Bellevue streets from traffic incidents, 14 people in cars, 14 pedestrians, 8 cyclists, which is a new high record and a depressing one at that. They didn't deserve to have their memories be reduced to a statistic. They were our neighbors' lives. They had lives and loved ones. And when friends have asked me how I've been okay cycling through Bellevue, I've had to tell them that it requires you to be brave. It requires that you disregard some anxiety around your sense of self-preservation, and I personally take some issue to that. When it comes to where I live, where I go to work, where I want to enjoy being, I should feel comfortable inviting people to come join me. And I think we can get there. Repeated studies consistently show that adding infrastructure like protected bike lanes to a road improves safety for all road users, drivers, walkers, as well as cyclists. And it reduces collisions and injuries by 30 to 50%. If we act with urgency in service to Vision Zero pledge and doing right by the people who have lost their lives and livelihoods on the city streets, and support the requests of Safe Bellevue Coalition, devote resources by rapidly constructing multimodal facilities, bus lanes, crosswalks, and protected bike lanes, we can make the city...
Mr. Zulanis, I apologize, your time has expired.
Sure.
I encourage you to...
Safe Bellevue, thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Scott Aldridge.
Hello, my name is Scott Aldridge. My mother grew up in Bellevue. I went to school in Bellevue and worked at Microsoft. I'm now active with the LD48 King County and Washington State Democratic Party. A week ago, my car popped a tire. While I was getting repaired, I used the Lime rental e-bike app heavily to get around Redmond. I was very impressed by how fast and how cheap it was and how much more present I was in the space as I traveled. I think I dropped by about half a dozen businesses that I never would have considered if I was driving due to the added hassle of parking. I tried to get to a meeting near Belred with Lime, and the e-bike shut off as it crossed the city border. I was very happy to learn that Lime is going to be expanding into Bellevue in the next couple of months, and I would ask that you continue to take actions to support diverse transportation modes and make e-bikes a central focus of designing road geometry going forward using the Safe Bellevue framework mentioned by the previous speaker. I've supported the Safe Bellevue campaign for quite some time because it's calling for the city to implement the type of rapid infrastructure that will make our streets safer and more useful to everyone while also making it more pleasant to bike. I would ask the council to support these efforts in future budget discussions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is Joe Kunzler, and Mr. Kunzler is joining us virtually. Mr. Kunzler, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Your time begins now.
Right, thank you very much. Joe Kunzler here. I want to thank you for your public service to Bellevue and the Sound Transit Pod in the state. I remain deeply concerned about what could be an ongoing situation in your city hall with a certain Alex Zimmerman. I just sent all of your emails supporting a list of incident reports from your public records office provided to me. I would encourage you to review them and note that time and again, the City Hall security wants a blanket trespass for Mr. Zimmerman. And I obviously support this, as I've addressed you many times about his misbehavior. I frankly find this pattern of him coming to commission meetings to campaign a violation of state law and an ongoing issue. So I'm going to ask if you haven't taken action that you do. If you have, let me know. I know you've already kicked him out of your city council, and I appreciate that. But I just want to make sure we completely conclude this issue in an honorable and dignified way rapidly. I know Redmond just kicked Zimmerman out for 180 days. And I hope your city will as well. We don't need to have this kind of anti-Semitic harassment of you and these committees and commissions to continue. I want to thank you for your public service again. And I wish you very well and hope you're able to enjoy Seafair. Thanks.
Our next and final pre-registered speaker is Maria Hudson.
I'll be submitting a total of, I think, 29 documents today. I want to advise this council I filed a RICO. For page 11 that I've numbered, I want to direct the council's attention to RCW 28A 32168. That's a school district law for Aaron's Law. It pertains to sex trafficking. In this document, in subsection B and C, it says medically and legally accurate definitions of sex trafficking and information about term stigmatization and how it may reduce reporting and increase the difficulty of detecting and prosecuting sex trafficking crimes. It goes on in the notes, that's really important, to talk about in subsection 2 and 3 that it happens at school. It talks about how law enforcement officers don't know the laws. It talks about the fact that the most important section is subsection 6 and 7. It says black girls in King County are 1% of the population. Number 7, subsection 7 says 80% of sex traffickers are white men. Your officers are showing up to me, blaming me for 80% white men's sex trafficking of my daughter. And additionally, they're abusing the Amber Alert system. So when she was below 18, they abused the Adam Walsh Child Protective Act. Now they're abusing Susan's Law 18 through 22. They caused my daughter to be lured. When I tried to report her missing, they're obstructing it. They're calling it DV. They're lying and saying she ran away. They're also disregarding our power of attorneys. So when I called to report her missing, everyone from NORCOM is misinforming from the start. So the investigation is malfeased from the start. Your officers this weekend, over the last week, caused my daughter to be taken to downtown Bellevue and given heroin. Then when I was calling and did not know what was going on, they actually accused my daughter, who was detoxing from heroin and developmentally delayed, of domestic violence. And one of your officers called me a bad mother for 80% white men sex trafficking my kid. That's 100% white. And then additionally, another officer, when I was calling NORCOM and my daughter was suicidal and threatened to kill me at Factoria substation, literally, aside from calling me a bad mom, he said, "I hope you get what you deserve," in direct reference to a murder-suicide of my daughter killing herself. So this dehumanization, where your officers, and also for the federal complaint, which is just a courtesy copy because I will be amending it, where Chief Milet directs your city council to disregard and ignore it, this is a continued custom to disregard Black protective parenting. So you guys are before the federal court right now for exploitation and also federal funding frauds because you're withholding safety
Ms.
services
Hudson?
and supports.
Your time has expired. I would encourage you to email the
I want to
council.
submit these. How do I do that?
I will take those from you.
Okay, they are
Thank
out
you.
of order, but they are numbered.
Thank you. That is the end of our pre-registered list, so I'd ask at this point, we do have a few minutes left. If there's anyone else joining us this evening who'd like to speak to the council, please raise your hand. I do see one, so come forward, sir, and if you could state your name for the record.
Good evening, council members. My name is Josh Friedman, and I'm a land use attorney at Hillis Clark. I'm here this evening to comment in support of the proposed building permit extension legislation, which is item number 10 on your agenda. My colleagues and I represent property owners and developers, and we have several clients in Bellevue with building permits that are under threat of expiration. Current market conditions make it extremely difficult to obtain financing and deliver new projects, as you know. Conditions will eventually improve, and Bellevue remains a hot market, but it is important to proactively adopt measures to support pipeline development. And that's development projects that are in the pipeline, not metaphorical pipelines, not literal pipelines. Seattle just passed legislation allowing 24-month building permit extensions, and the proposal before you offers up to 3 6-month extensions. I would urge you to consider if you could add at least one additional 6-month extension at the building permit application stage, because allowing pending projects to stay active will ultimately mean that housing and jobs get provided faster. Keeping projects active also ensures continued permit and review revenues for the appropriate city departments, so it's a fiscally responsible decision as well. While we'd urge you to think about how to expand the proposed flexibility even further, we also urge quick action. Projects face imminent building permit expirations, and we really appreciate Greg Schrader and his team's quick reaction to the feedback that applicants have passed into the city. Thank you much for your time, and thanks for your attention to this important matter.
Thank you. I will do one final call out for any additional speakers. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. Okay, I do not see any additional hands, Mayor. I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have a report from our city manager, Diane Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I actually have 2 items tonight. The first is a presentation, so I'll ask our team to come on up, and then I have a verbal update to give you regarding the Republic Services work stoppage. So for our presentation tonight, we have Tara Johnson, our planning director, and Jennifer Ewing, our sustainability manager, here to give you an update on the accomplishments of the Energy Smart East Side program. It's a partnership of 6 cities, which the city of Bellevue manages, to provide assistance to residents for installation of heat pumps, which is an important tool for reducing building energy emissions. And with that, I will hand it over to Tara.
Thank you, City Manager Carlson. Good evening, Deputy Mayor, and council members. Thank you for having us. We're here this evening to provide you with an update on Energy Smart East Side. It's really one of our signature programs that's part of the Environmental Stewardship Initiative. Unfortunately, our program manager for our ESE couldn't be here tonight, so Jennifer and I are going to be walking you through some of the program highlights this evening. So tonight, we're here for information only. We'll provide you with an update on some of the accomplishments on Energy Smart East Side, the heat pump incentive program, and then some of our next steps to further our residential decarbonization efforts. So we'll start off and provide you with an overview of the program, talk about some of its goals and objectives, what we've accomplished, look at what's up ahead, and also talk about some of our planned outreach over the summer months. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Jennifer.
Great, thank you. So as a refresher, Energy Smart East Side is a home electrification and energy efficiency program that serves the residents of Bellevue, Issaquah, Kirkland, Mercer Island, Redmond, and Sammamish under the umbrella of the Eastside Climate Partnership Interlocal Agreement. The City of Bellevue administers the program on behalf of the 6 cities, and we split the administrative and other costs proportionally with the other cities. So really able to leverage our combined city dollars to run the program. I'll highlight some of our accomplishments this year, and then in your packet, the Energy Smart Eastside annual report does a nice job going into a little more detail on some of the things we've been doing over the past year. In general, we're really proud of this program and the work we've done over the past couple of years to stand it up and bring in a number of grants, establish a bunch of great partnerships, and the program has really become a model both locally and nationally for a city-led partnership for residential decarbonization. So just a little more background on the program. You know, the primary focus of the program is home electrification, and in particular, right now, our focus is heat pumps. To achieve our carbon neutrality goal as a city, electrifying residential buildings is really a key strategy. And when you look at the natural gas use and emissions in Bellevue, natural gas use in our homes is the majority of the natural gas use in Bellevue. And then looking within a home, about 2/3 of the natural gas use is attributed to space heating, about 1/3 to water heating, and then the rest to cooking, fireplaces, and things like that. And about 80% of the single-family homes in Bellevue are heated with natural gas, and only about 10% of the multifamily housing units. So this is really why making the replacement of those furnaces with electric heat pumps is really an impactful strategy for achieving our greenhouse gas emissions reductions goals. So to be on track with our 2050 carbon neutrality target, we're focused on accelerating the market transformation and community adoption of heat pumps with an ambitious target that by 2032, nearly all residential HVAC replacements are heat pumps. Heat pumps, of course, also provide air cooling and air filtration. So in addition to having a benefit of reducing carbon emissions, they also are an important community resilience tool, helping our residents be more resilient to extreme heat and smoke events. Last year, we saw real evidence that our outreach, marketing, and incentive programs are helping to bend the curve and influence heat pump adoption. Heat pump adoption was mostly flat year over year after 2021 kind of kickstarted more of an interest in heat pumps and central air conditioning. And then we saw with the scale up of Energy Smart East Side in 2023, we saw a 5 percentage point increase in the heat pump permits filed compared to the prior year. Within those numbers, this is looking at across the east side, and then we have data for Bellevue specifically. In Bellevue, 119 homes leveraged an Energy Smart East Side incentive, which included 24 affordable housing units at an Imagine Housing property, 67 low and moderate income households receiving an incentive, and 27 other households who took advantage of our distributor community discount offered through our HVAC contractor network. And then, whoops, let me just go back real quick. And then many others benefited from our marketing and outreach and education. So we're not necessarily trying to reach everyone with an incentive, but we are trying to reach everyone with our marketing and outreach and education, recognizing a lot of people can install a heat pump without the need for any additional incentives. And then our goal for this year is to really keep that momentum going and see another 5 percentage point increase in heat pump adoption. So the Energy Smart East Side program is designed to support homeowners in Bellevue and across the East Side in moving forward with the transition from traditional heating to a heat pump, regardless of their income or where they're at in their customer journey. This starts with grassroots education and marketing to raise awareness, which includes workshops, one-on-one energy advisors, support for residents who are considering a heat pump purchase. We have an established network of HVAC contractors who are mission aligned and also trained on helping residents stack incentives from our program, from PSE and tax credits and that sort of thing. We have negotiated a community discount from 3 different heat pump providers through our distributor network. So now able to get $1,000 off a heat pump from Mitsubishi, Carrier, and Bryant, which are 3 of the bigger manufacturers of heat pumps. And then we have a $6,000 instant rebate for moderate income households and full cost coverage for low income households. Our Boost program is for low income households, and it's run through a great partnership we have in place with HopeLink. So really building off a lot of our work with HopeLink on our human services programming. This partnership really helps us connect to energy burdened residents who can benefit the most from a heat pump. New this year, we're installing heat pumps in 50 adult family homes that serve Medicaid patients through a special grant provided by the Department of Commerce. We also successfully increased the community discount on our heat pumps from $500 to $1,000, and that's at no cost to our program. That's through our distributor partnerships. And finally, we launched a volunteer energy advisor program, which is run by our outreach fellow, Emily, who's in the audience. I think she's that way, is in the audience, and she's been out in the community a lot this summer in Bellevue and at other big events around the East Side, tabling, sometimes with herself and often with our volunteers. And then want to just highlight our recent expansion to adult family homes has really been particularly meaningful as we have the opportunity to help up to 6 patients in each home, plus the caregivers there. We got a really nice quote and email back from one of the recipients from All Star Adult Family Homes. They said, "We're extremely grateful and thankful that this program exists. The equipment is great and runs efficiently. The contractors were very pleasant to work with. This program is especially important as our residents, being older, are more vulnerable to heat, so this has been a great opportunity." In terms of what's next, the second half of this year is busy for us. We're going to be pursuing a couple additional grants through the state. We're completing a strategic plan for the program. The summer tends to be pretty busy with a lot of outreach. We also are doing some marketing now that's triggered by the weather. So when it gets above, I think, 80 degrees, you'll start to see some targeted ads for heat pumps and staying cool. On the grant front, we anticipate the program will have the opportunity to apply for and hopefully secure another maybe $1 to $3 million in funds through 2 different state grant opportunities that we're tracking closely. The program has really benefited significantly through our pooled funding from the 6 cities, and we're about a third funded by city contributions, and then the rest of the program budget is through state and PSE grants. We're also looking towards the future and developing a project to look at the long-term strategy for Energy Smart East Side, to look at gaps in the market and opportunities for the program to assist in community adoption of other energy efficiency and electrification actions such as weatherization, heat pump water heaters, and other strategies. So excited to move that forward, complete the strategy project, and then move towards planning implementation around that. And then finally, look for Sarah and Emily in the community this summer at various events. Stop by, say hi. If you see them With a volunteer, make sure to just thank the volunteers for contributing their time and expertise to support the program. And if you're interested in a heat pump, feel free to schedule a call with Emily or one of our volunteer energy advisors. They're happy to answer any questions you might have to make the process less overwhelming. So with that, thank you for the opportunity to share our update tonight, and we look forward to seeing you in the community this summer. Thank you.
For that update. Now, as the council knows and much of the community knows, we have had a work stoppage from Republic Services for our solid waste collection. We do contract with Republic Services, and starting about a week ago on Wednesday, July 9th, due to an out-of-area labor disruption, that's what caused the work stoppage here at our Republic Services local operations in King County and Snohomish County, as well as many other communities across the nation. Our utilities staff has been working very closely with our local Republic Services contacts to explore strategies to help minimize the impacts as much as possible and to provide our residents with some options to manage their waste during the work stoppage. Our staff coordinated with Republic Services to operate a free drop-off location for Bellevue residents that started today, so Tuesday, at Bannerwood Park, and it will also operate tomorrow, Wednesday, at Bannerwood Park from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. This drop-off location will accept bag garbage, recycling, and compost materials. And Republic Services is on site to help assist residents with their drop-off. The drop-off, according to utility staff, was very active today with Bellevue residents. And we do understand that some residents, it was so active, some were waiting and were not able to quite make it in time for the cutoff. But they will have another opportunity tomorrow. And because of this, Utilities has worked with the Bellevue School District to locate an alternative, a new site starting on Thursday. That will be at Odell Middle School. And drop-off times, we haven't quite determined that yet with Republic Services, but that will be announced as soon as possible. Another issue that has been raised by our community is whether or not there will be service credits for the missed pickups. And our utility staff has been working with Public Services and will be working to ensure that we do provide credits to affected customers. That's consistent with our Republic contract with the City of Bellevue. So we do not know yet what the duration of this stoppage will be. But as I mentioned at the beginning, our utility staff is in daily contact with Republic Services multiple times a day, in fact, and they will continue to update our residents as frequently as needed to give them information about the changing situation. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, on to council business and new initiatives. We have two recommendations to two different commissions and boards. The first one is Councilmember Lee appointing someone to the Environmental Services Commission. Would you like to do that, Councilmember Lee?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to appoint Mary Thyssen to a full term on the Environmental Services Commission, expiring May 31, 2029. Mary is a very excellent new commissioner if it's appointed. She has excellent credentials and she will be a valuable member of the commission. So I move to appoint Mary Thyssen to a full term of the commission.
Is there a second?
Second.
Great, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and then Councilmember Hamilton has an appointment recommendation to the Parks and Community Services Board. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to appoint Eric Drever to a full term on the Parks and Community Services Board, expiring May 31st, 2029.
Can you just second that?
Second.
Okay, go ahead.
And I just wanted to say that we had a number of highly qualified candidates. I'm constantly impressed by the people that want to get involved in the city in a really meaningful way. And also just want to show some appreciation to our deputy mayor for sharing his process in kind of selecting a board or commission member. Thought it worked really well for us. So it was rigorous and ultimately arrived at Eric Drever, who I think is going to do an amazing job, seems very engaged and ready to get to work.
Great. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, welcome to Mary and Eric. So do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we have a public hearing tonight. Would you like to introduce that, City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. Tonight, we have a public hearing with an opportunity for the public to comment on the proposed release of a water easement at a property in Eastgate. On June 3rd, Council declared this easement as surplus. And tonight, we have Lauren Matlick, our Real Property Division Manager, here to give you a very quick background on the proposed easement release. And after his presentation, it'll hand back over to the council to conduct a public hearing. And we are asking or requesting council consider adopting the proposed resolution this evening. So with that, I'll hand it over to Lauren.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Carlson. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. Our staff report this evening is on a request to release a portion of a water easement located at 3425 158th Avenue Southeast in Eastgate. On June 3rd, the council declared this easement as surplus to the city's needs and set today as the date for holding the public hearing. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to allow the public opportunity to comment on this release. The property is located along Southeast East Gateway and between 156th and 158th Southeast, adjacent to the I-90 148th Street interchange. The property owner is developing the site into a 77-unit market rate townhome community, the configuration of which will require a modification to the current water service route. A portion of the existing easement will be released with the utility facilities shown blue remaining. The red vertical striped area will be removed and replaced what is shown as a yellow grid. The new easement will be granted to the city at no cost. Following the public hearing, staff requests council action on the proposed resolution authorizing the release of the easement. This ends our staff report. I'll be available after the public hearing to answer any questions.
All right, thank you so much. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
I move to open the public hearing.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, do we have anybody signed up to speak tonight?
Thank you, Mayor. No, there are no speakers signed up, and I will also say that the council has not received any written comments on this topic. So I do have to ask if there's anybody else joining us this evening who would like to comment on this specific public hearing. Please raise your hand. Please come forward, sir. If you can state your name for the record first.
It'd be great if you could just bring the map up again, just so that I can get an understanding of what's being done. Thank you.
Do you have a comment, or would you like to just see the map
I
again?
do not have a comment. I just want, I'm unclear what the map was of what the change is.
Are you able to put that back up on the screen?
Sure. Oops. Oops. Thank you, Charmaine.
Okay, so do you want to do a final call for comments?
Yeah, do we have anyone else joining who would like to make a comment? Okay.
Okay.
No hands, Mayor. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So this seems very straightforward. It's not unprecedented. There's no cost to the city. Any comments or questions from anybody? Okay, with that, can I get a motion, please?
I move to adopt Resolution 10-527 authorizing the execution of documents necessary to release a portion of an existing water easement located at 3245 158th Avenue Southeast in Bellevue, Washington, which has been declared surplus to the city's needs and no longer required to provide continued water service. The granting and recording of such release being deemed in the best interest of the public.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have an ordinance, and City Manager, would you like to introduce this for us, please?
Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. This evening, we have a permit extension ordinance for our construction permits, and Council has approved these in the past in order to grant additional time for developers to evaluate market conditions and evaluate the viability of their individual construction projects. The proposed ordinance provides a 180-day extension to applications and issued permits, plus an opportunity for an additional 180-day extension for those applicants who have reached the stage of having all proposals. Tonight we have our building official, Greg Schrader, here to provide the background and information and to consider asking council for direction tonight. So with that, I'll hand it over to Greg.
Thank you, Ms. City Manager, and good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members. It's a pleasure to be here. So as the City Manager said, this ordinance for council consideration provides an additional 180 days. I won't repeat all of that verbiage, but I'll provide a little more information as we go along here. The agenda that I want to cover is the scope of the extensions, why we have time limits on applications and issued permits, the prior extension ordinances for comparison purposes, and then we can get to any questions that council may have. Just to be clear, this applies to construction permits, building and clearing and grading permits. There are some what we call ancillary permits, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, that are part of under the building permit umbrella. It applies across the entire city and, as I mentioned, includes building and clearing and grading. So permits vest and expire because the vesting at the application, the building permit application, provides certainty to the developer what the set of rules are that they will be designing and constructing to. It also helps the city because all of the entire team has that certainty. But we also have limits on how long those applications or issued permits stay valid, because at some point codes change, they're updated. In fact, next year we have new construction and fire codes coming. So we do want to ensure that construction happens relatively current codes. But it's not unusual that it is 1 or 2 cycles after what's been adopted. So the prior extension ordinances all go back to the housing crisis in 2010 and 2011. Then we had the pandemic impacts 2020, and again, we brought an extension ordinance to council in 2023, most recently in 2024 because of the impacts to the office market and to support housing production. Those were all 180-day extensions, except for 2011, we did a 1-year extension. We have a little under 10,000 permits, or I should say applications and issued permits that are in process right now. And one of the things that I just want to clarify about the proposed ordinance is that the 180 days within this ordinance has an accumulated effect. So there's an automatic 180 days for a project that's in application. If it moves forward to having all approvals, this ordinance grants an additional 180 days. So that's 1 year. And then if it achieves issued status, which means paying some additional fees like the traffic impact fee, there's an additional 180 days that's granted. So that's 1.5 year potential extension that's available to be achieved, because I think you've heard some comparisons to the Seattle extension of 24 months. And I know that council has received some communications about this ordinance on both sides, most of it in support. I think there's also been a request from some parties for some additional time. The 2023 and 2024 ordinances that were 180 days, again, they provided 180 days in application, 180 days in issued status, and it is all cumulative. So I believe the city of Seattle, based on communications we've had with their staff, did an extension back in 2020, and then nothing until more recently here with this 2-year extension. They do have a little more flexibility in their administrative code to keep projects alive, but that's an approximate comparison with Seattle. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, thank you very much. Can we start with a motion, please, Deputy Mayor?
Absolutely. I move to adopt ordinance 6853, extending the life of certain complete building permit applications, complete clearing and grading permit applications, issued building permits, and issued clearing and grading permits when complete permit applications have been submitted to the city by or the issued permits remain active on. The effective date of this ordinance providing for an exception for civil violations, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date.
Okay, so I'll just, any comments or questions? Okay, if everybody's, we'll start with Councilmember Baharula.
This is more a clarification, so the presentation was very clear. But one thing I didn't quite understand, if there are projects that got a prior extension of some kind, are they allowed to get this extension as well? And what would be the longest duration for someone that's been in this process, for example?
Thank you, council member. The answer is yes. They would qualify for this extension on top of any prior extension that they received. And the question of what is the longest, it really would depend because this is, well, let me describe it this way. All of these applications came in at different points in time. So some of them may have applied in time to get the benefit of the 2023 extension and the 2024 and would potentially be eligible for this extension. There are others that didn't apply early enough to get those prior extensions. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so it could be as much as 3 years or more right now for some.
Yes, I believe that's approximately accurate.
Okay, got it.
Councilmember Smidoria? Okay, my only question is are we going to keep doing this forever?
Thank you, Mayor. That's a great question, and I would recommend that we do not. Next year, we have new construction and fire codes, and I think we really do want to ensure that projects are designed to current codes. So while I support this ordinance and would recommend adoption of it, I do think that there does need to be a limit. At some point, developers have to determine if projects really are viable under the market conditions. One of the factors that's really been impacting projects right now have been the changes with the energy code. There are also some changes with accessibility requirements, but the energy code is only going to continue to become more restrictive. So at some point, that projects really need to make that decision.
So are you saying that if somebody applied for a permit today, they would be under much more regulation through fire code and accessibility and energy code than somebody who applied 3 years ago but might be building at the exact same time?
For the energy code, the answer is yes. For the building and fire codes, generally no. There has been a structural change at the state level, but I think they're walking that back with the next 2026 construction code adoption, so I'm really not concerned about that. Primarily, it's the energy code that keeps changing.
So how, is that fair?
Well, there are pros and cons. We want to support these projects as they're evaluating the viability, and this ordinance incentivizes projects to keep moving forward through the application process so that they're positioned and ready to start construction if market conditions change.
But shouldn't we just give the same standards to everybody until we change them, and then it gets changed for everybody?
Well, that's a great question. At any point in time, the projects that we have in our system often the applications came in at different points in time, so it's not at all unusual that they're vested to different codes.
Okay. Who's in charge of deciding what code that they're, with the energy code, is that mandated by the state, or is that something?
The state.
Okay, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. That was a great question. Was one of the concern of people in the audience who were against this code too. So if I kind of start my project in 2019, I am vested by the energy code of 2018. And if I do my project right now, I'm going to vested by the recent energy code. And the cost of kind of my building goes up because
Yes.
the energy code is much more restricted.
That's correct.
That's correct statement. So I think that's the risk. That's why some people are against this extension. Great. I think, Mayor, thank you for clarifying this because that was one of my questions as well. I have another question. Do we have data on how many projects that we granted this extension in, I don't know, since 2020, I guess, or 2021? That have broken ground, been completed, or being abandoned since we are extending things for like past 4 years. Do we have those data?
I don't have the exact numbers, so we could either find that information to provide it to you, or I could give you an approximation at this time. I don't think we've had many projects that have broken ground and been abandoned. I think a lot of projects where they've stalled has been in the application process where they're trying to make that decision about whether to keep spending money for their design teams, architectural and engineering teams to keep moving the project forward, responding to feedback from the city, and continuing to develop 100% construction plans. That's where most of them are at. There are a few that have gotten their initial permit issued and they're kind of in a holding status at that point.
So based on what you just said, that no one has yet abandoned, means that we are achieving the goal of not abandoned by extending this extension. Have we ever considered that if you're making this extension, maybe we can ask for something in return, like maybe more affordability or something? Have we ever considered that at least get some incentive-based permit extension model?
That's a great question. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think with this ordinance, we are considering that, and our primary objective with the granting the additional 6 months, besides the benefit to the projects and the developers, was that it's really beneficial to city staff to know which projects to really be focusing on and working on. And what sometimes happens in this circumstance is that we have a lot of these projects in a holding pattern, and then the market conditions change, and then all of them or many of them become viable, and so then they all come back to us and want their projects as quickly as possible. And if we can keep them moving through the process, or at least the ones that believe their projects are viable enough to invest the money to get them to achieving all approvals, then they're much better positioned to start the project, start construction once market conditions do change.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you answered my question. The last question is based on my last question is the comparison that we have heard to Seattle. That is 24 months we are 6 months. You are saying because they haven't done anything the last 2 years, what we did that on yearly basis, if we compare now apple and orange, overall, we are extending more than Seattle on the overall timeline. Am I right? Is that correct understanding?
I think that's accurate. It depends on the specific project and which prior extension ordinance they got the benefit of, but I think that's roughly, yes, equal.
Thank you. So I think overall, I completely understand the gentleman in the audience who were saying it's not fair that someone is now starting the project, is vested by the newer energy code, but if someone has started early, that's a older energy code and is not fair. But I think considering the current market condition, and we need to have a robust pipeline of project for maintaining the need that Bellevue needs in the development and construction, I agree with this extension, and I am aligned, Mayor. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate the comments and questions of my colleagues. Don't have a ton to add, just appreciate Director Horner and Mr. Schrader bringing this to us. I'm aware we have good stakeholder support for it. So in light of the comments that have been made and some reservations, that it's something I'm definitely in favor of as well, and look forward to hearing from Councilmember Lee and moving forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I share the same question that's being raised, except I'm still not quite clear as to one question and then maybe the solution. How do we address what I'm concerned about? So what's going to happen is that if people apply, get extension earlier, they have an older code. Even though they get extension, they will build up to the older code. They do not have to comply with the newer code, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So to me, I think that's not the ideal situation, because we want to have our homes built up to the same new code, right? I mean, that's why we new code, right? So, because there has to be advantage, benefits we get. And if they get extension, they can wait and they can build. So they should get to the same endpoint to meet the same standards. I think that's fair, right?
As I understand your question, I think it's maybe similar to what the mayor asked about, shouldn't everyone be building to the same set of codes?
Yes.
And I think the thing to keep in mind is that that's never really the case, regardless of extensions.
Right.
Projects are all coming in at a different point in time. Some come in a week before a new code goes into effect. Some come in the day after. And so our staff are typically working with, on average, about 3 different sets of codes because of all the different projects that are vested, so or have application dates that under state law vest them to a different set of codes.
I may be too idealistic, but don't we want everybody to build to the most up-to-date code?
Well, I think the intent of state vesting law, and of course I'm not an attorney, but my best understanding is that the intent is for projects to be constructed to codes that are relatively current, but our administrative code that establishes the duration of life of an application and an issued permit is what impacts how much of a lag time there is between a new code coming on and an application needing to meet that new code.
Greg, can you maybe give Councilmember Lee and the whole council the opposite, like what would happen if we did not approve this tonight? What you anticipate happening?
Great question. Thank you, Mayor. Well, there are projects that, and I think you heard communications about this, that within the next 6 months would have probably the first phase, because on major projects, our administrative code allows phasing so that the base structure comes in and that vests the entire project. So if that building permit application or issued permit expires, then the developer has to decide, is the project still viable enough to redesign with the new energy code and any other code changes and reapply and spend the money to update the plans and continue. Or if they don't believe it's viable, they would not continue to pursue the project. Either they would consider a different project, or maybe they would sell the property, or if they had an option to buy the property, they might give up that option.
Let me finish or continue. I understand that each contractor, builder, has their own reason, whatever they want, to do based on what they're capable of, the timing, all that. So it's all up to them. But for us, I think it's important that we get the the most up-to-date code we have when the project's done. And as to the extension, they want more time. I think that's reasonable because it gives them time to decide to make the best code that we require as possible. So I have no problem with giving extension more than what you are considering, 24 months or less than that. 3 times is 18 months, right? The key is what, because condition is such that they can't do it now and it's not going to be feasible. It's not going to be worthwhile economically. So they need extension. But I think we should help them to do that. I completely agree. We need to help the contractors because we need them to build them. But I would hope that just being fair, just being for our benefit, Bellevue wants to have the building that's more up to speed, up to the code. And so that's something that a trade-off, hope that they understand. And since we're doing this now, as opportunity give us now to do all this stuff, so why can't we talk to the builders and think about if they would accept that as a give and take, right? We give them longer time, but we want them to build to a more up-to-date code. If they agree, I think we got the best of both worlds.
Okay, thank you for your comments and questions.
I believe I understand your question, Councilmember Lee. And perhaps I should have done a better job of clarifying this earlier. The primary reason that the developers want the extension is to avoid having to redesign to the more current code. That's almost the entire reason. And we talked about the energy code earlier having a really big impact. That's certainly one of the drivers of the feedback that we've heard from stakeholders.
I think that's something I would like to consider, whether it's desirable or not. So just for my opinion. I may or may not, I don't know. Thank you.
Okay, everybody has something to say here. Go ahead, I'm going to actually go ahead and then I'll call on you.
Mine is very short. I think the whole point, as you mentioned, is the cost, the labor cost, the tariff cost, all of the costs are now crazy high already. And for some developer that if they wanted to go back to the updated, the newer code, there is additional, in some project, maybe up to $14 million additional redesign cost that is added to all of the existing tough market is going to be very impossible, and the project is already not penciled out. If they go back to, if they update to the newer code, absolutely not penciled out. The reason of extension is that. Am I saying it correct?
Yes, that's accurate. If the project isn't moving forward, isn't viable enough to move forward right now, it's probably less so if it requires the investment to redesign and pay for the construction cost to update to the
based on the
code.
newer code. So
Right.
it's going to be worse than the situation by a lot for developer and our project. That's why we are extending that they can keep the 2018 energy code for another hopefully the market, the labor, the whole interest rate, everything goes back and they can start development. Sorry, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Two really quick things, one question and one comment. Comment to the discussion so far. If we agree to give this extension, which we have in prior cycle, like prior years as well, I think it's a decision we make because we want to foster the idea of development and keep applications that have already gone through the process to have the opportunity to build if the conditions change. So I'm very supportive of the idea of that flexibility given the current market conditions. Just want to state that as a sort of frame of reference for where we are. The question I have is, and I understand the energy code is your primary concern, but you also started with a mention about fire code and maybe other safety standards. That is an area for me that's a little bit more concerning. If in the last 3 years, we have made decisions that allow our buildings to be safer from a fire safety standpoint, and now we allow buildings to come in where that safety standard is no longer required or goes back 3 years, that feels more concerning to me than the viability through energy standards, et cetera. While I appreciate the importance of that, safety standards feel like they're less negotiable. So is there a real difference in the safety standards over the last 3 years where you feel like, yes, there is a market change?
Thank you, council member. I mentioned earlier that we do have new construction of fire codes that the state will mandate adoption of next year. And so I would not recommend an additional extension ordinance beyond this because we do start to overlap with that new code. I don't have significant concerns about the projects that are vested to the prior building and fire codes. I mentioned that there was a structural issue that the state is addressing that will be fixed in the 2024 code. So I think that's probably where our focus should be, is having projects come in that vest to those codes rather than extending too far past that. Does that answer your question?
Okay, just going to paraphrase what I took away is, no, there is not a concern from a safety standpoint or a fire code standpoint for this extension.
Yes,
That fair?
that's accurate.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, one more thing. We were talking about abandoned developments, and I get a lot of questions about the one in Factoria.
Yes, and I have some good news on that. I think they are kicking off construction. It was kind of a complicated process with the original developers seeking financing, but they are reinitiating construction.
Okay, good. Thank you for going down there. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Great.
Thank you, Mayor.
We're going to take a little break here.
I did not say I did not vote yet. I would like to clarify. I agree with y'all, Councilmember, completely. I want to be sure that there's nothing else beside the safety factor which was mentioned, because I do not want to compromise something that, because
City
it's not
Clerk,
up
we
to
have
up
already
to code.
voted. What is the procedure here?
So if Councilmember Lee did not audibly vote, are you abstaining?
No, I'm asking the final question before I decide what to do.
Unfortunately, we did vote. So you can get an answer to your question, but I'm afraid that it's done. So let's take a break and you can talk to Mr. Schrader there.
Thank you.
Okay, we will resume at 7:30. Okay, thank you. We are back. And Councilmember Lee, I understand that you wanted to make a statement.
Yes, after talking to the staff, when the council had the recess, I decided I would vote yes with the majority of the council. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a study session item tonight. City Manager, would you like to introduce this?
Thank you, Mayor and Deputy Mayor. We are now 6 months into our current biennial budget, and at this point in the biennial cycle. The financial outlook helps to provide some information that will guide us as we look at the mid-by budget, which comes up later this year. And of course, we do continuously track what's happening to the economy and the revenues at the local, state, and national level to understand how we're doing on our biennial budget against our existing budget forecast. So tonight you're going to hear from John Risha, our Chief Financial Officer, and Evan Phillips, Director of Financial and Strategy and Performance. They're going to talk a bit about policy uncertainty at the national level that does make prediction of our financial outlook a little challenging, but they're going to explain a lot of that about what goes into that uncertainty and how the policies that are out there affect us locally. And given this uncertainty, we are fortunate to have a relatively conservative approach to our forecast, and likely that we will continue that as we go forward with the mid-biennial process. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Mr. Risha to get into the presentation tonight.
Thank you, City Manager, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council members. Thank you for having us tonight. We're going to step into our financial forecast. This is for information only, and there will be no action requested at the end of this, but we do have plenty of time for questions. Our agenda tonight is to talk through the calendar. Where are we at in our overall budget process? Because we are in the midst of a budget process. We're always in a budget process. Talk a bit about economic headwinds and uncertainty. Translate what does that actually mean for us in Bellevue, and talk about our next steps, and then open it up for questions for that process. Right now, we are here before you in the summer is our normal forecast time, June, July. That gives us at least a quarter of revenue data to understand current trends of what we're starting to see. We'll also give you a small reminder in that our mid-biennium forecasts, as City Manager was intimating, really aren't usually about course corrections unless something is significantly going on. We're always watching, and we're trying to validate that the revenue environment, which you don't actually adopt, but you adopt appropriations or how much we spend, we want to make sure that the revenue is coming in as we anticipated, and that we won't face an economic hardship on the other side as we go into our mid-biennium. And so this gives us a chance to share with you what we're seeing, what we're watching, and if there was a need for corrections, we would be identifying it during this time frame. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Phillips.
Right. So one of the things that we wanted to start out today, oftentimes we start out with the Bellevue perspective and then zoom out. This time we are going to start at looking at that global or national lens and then zooming into Bellevue. I'll hit this really quick. This is some information that's tracked by the Federal Reserve. This is to measure economic policy uncertainty. So as the economic policy picture is unclear, that's where you see those spikes over time. This data goes back to 1985. You could see this data goes back to 2000. And the recessions, the dot-com Great Recession and the COVID recession are highlighted there as well. And you see those are very spiky because there's a lot of uncertainty, whether federal policy or trade challenges, immigration policy, et cetera. If you look to the far right in 2025, we are currently in the spikiest or most uncertain times since the data started being tracked in 1985. So to give you a sense of perspective, again, this is a narrow window of time just going back to the mid-'80s, but still gives you a flavor where we're at. So I do want to spend some time to linger here because there is a lot of information. This is what goes into all of this economic uncertainty. We're kind of calling this our economic policy landscape or mosaic. And each one of these tiles represents part of that uncertainty, that spikiness that we're talking about. And I'll just go through each of these and just at a very high level. And I'll start with geopolitical instability and then go clockwise around. Obviously, the war in Ukraine, continuing strife and turmoil in the Middle East, which has impacts on commodity prices, whether grain from Ukraine or oil exports from the Gulf region. So that's something that we're monitoring. The Budget Reconciliation Law, also known as the Big Beautiful Bill, did pass in the last few weeks. And that is something that we're still processing the impacts of. A lot of the implementation of that bill is delayed until after the midterm elections. So there may be some near-term impacts, but there are also some longer impacts that we should be aware of, even if it doesn't show up in our data right away. So something to be aware of there. Labor costs. We are in a constrained labor market for a variety of reasons, and I'll touch on some of them a little bit later on. But higher labor costs, a more competitive human capital market, is keeping costs higher, which of course leads me to the persistent issue that we've been having, which is inflation. Obviously, since COVID, we did see a spike in 2020 and 2021. That is persisting higher than the target Fed rate, which is about 2%. And we're, as of today, the latest information came out from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which was 2.7%. Or 2.6%, depending on which CPI you're looking at. So that is higher than we would normally want. We also have federal funding rollbacks. This is in addition to the budget reconciliation bill that I was referring to earlier. This includes withholding of already appropriated funding, whether in the form of grants, think transportation funds, think potentially human services assistance. Those are things that we're watching and monitoring because while we're not as reliant as other jurisdictions, that is still something that could impact some of our service delivery or projects. Washington state legislation, the legislature did adopt some new tax policy changes as we and the intergovernmental affairs team or relations team rolled out and presented over the spring. We are still understanding and trying to analyze the impacts of some of those policy changes, and that is something that we want to put on our watch list, but we don't have reflected in the data yet. Immigration and jobs, this is a really sensitive issue, and I want to be respectful of that. With net inflows of immigration being lower in this administration, and then outflows as well, that is further constraining the job market and leading to inflation and other economic impacts. Two last things here really quick. We did hear from our friends in development services. Interest rates and borrowing costs are a significant impact to the development pipeline. So monitoring that, as well as a related issue of tariff impacts, whether or not they are being implemented, at what time, what cadence, what percentage, and on what commodities or goods or services. That has been a bit of a moving target. So we're monitoring, but we're not seeing that in the data just yet. John, is there anything you would add?
Well, I'll do it with the next slide. That's fine.
Sure. So I touched on some of these a little bit, but at a high level, we did want to give you a data snapshot. So just a few things to take away. The dollar's value is the lowest it's been in 30 years as compared to the euro. So your buying power for goods and services and labor and everything else is diminished, especially in a global market. So that's something, as Washington state is more export dependent than many other states, that is a more significant factor here than some other places. Consumer confidence is 25% lower than this time last year. Our gross domestic product through Q1 is down by 0.5%, so we're seeing negative growth. Obviously, that is concerning for us. We'll see if that persists. Inflation, as I was saying, is persisting somewhere between 2% and 3%, but that may also be impacted by some compounding impact of tariffs, commodity prices, labor market, et cetera. Interest rates are still stuck, again, Development Services talking about this, stuck between the target Fed rate of 4.25% and 4.5%. And the Washington unemployment rate, while historically low relatively at 4.9%, we are seeing some more significant layoff notices from the Washington State service that tracks that. So making sure we are watching the layoff notices, we are watching the labor market from that perspective as well.
It really brings us to how many different kinds of things that we're watching. When we talk about inflation, Evan talked about the fact that they just released that inflation came in with a 2.7 or a 0.3% growth over June, so year-over-year growth. To us, interestingly, we were anticipating it coming in a little bit higher. We were anticipating more like a 2.9. It came in a little bit lower, but it's still ahead, and there's a global feel, or at least a national concern about stagflation, where that higher than a 2.3 inflation rate keeps sticking around. That's one of the things, and we're starting to look at the underpinnings of the CPI and what it really means when we look at different aspects of it, whether it's the wage side or the commodities side. Housing is one of those pieces, and when you exclude different, like if you exclude the energy sector, it's actually not a bad picture, but it's not great. I say that because we're in a really bouncy time. When we think about the interest rates, while the Fed has set a target rate, what we've seen the lending world kind of lean into is they like this 5 to 6% range that they have on construction and market rate loans. That's kind of a comfort spot that they seem to be leaning into. And there's been discussion by the markets about, oh, the Fed's gonna do 2 or 3 25 basis point drops this year and next year. We're not really seeing the motivation until they decide if that stagflation can be addressed by this. And so there's some really interesting pieces to it. When we look at unemployment, it used to be a great indicator of a challenging environment. Our unemployment rate in Washington is below 5%, and it has stayed below 5%. That means there are not a lot of jobs that are out there that aren't being filled. And while there have been layoffs around the country, we're also seeing reemployment happening at a pretty quick rate. So there's some positive news that comes with that. We're watching all of the different pieces, and one of the things that we also, as we're starting to think about some of the next steps, we really need to be watching that. Now, I'm going to offer a moment of praise. We at Bellevue, we have an economist on staff who is phenomenal. Mayor, I shared this with you, but for all of the council members, our economists missed the tax forecast in net by 1% for last year. I don't know of an economist any place who could pull that off. She is an amazing individual who has done some just phenomenal work for us and is watching all of these factors to help us forecast these. And so she's got all of these balls and the data in the air that she's trying to help us make sense of in that process. So what does this mean for Bellevue?
So at that point, we do have a few takeaways that we want to leave you with, and we'll dive into this a little bit deeper. The 2025 forecast is basically on par with the 2024 forecast, so we're aligned with our assumptions. So the numbers that we're going to be presenting to you tonight are the same numbers as last time around. Now, are the sources precisely the same? Is the proportions across different sectors of the economy the same? Not necessarily, but what we've learned from our great work from our economists is that our assumptions from last year still hold true. That said, the policy uncertainty with each one of those tiles, one of them can happen, or multiple of them can happen, really impacting in various magnitudes that are really hard to predict across our forecast. So within current conditions, within current data, we feel comfortable with our forecast. But with the additional uncertainty, we want to echo some caution that it may take some time for those policy impacts to roll out and be experienced in our data and by our residents and by our businesses. So we're on track, but there is a lot of uncertainty that is cause for concern. And a lot of consumers and residents are feeling that as well. The lower consumer confidence, lower sentiment, instability, rising costs, all of those things persisting might have people spending less money at local merchants on services, and that may impact city revenues as well. As I keep saying, inflation is stubbornly persistent. Normally, we'd expect it to be somewhere between 1% and 2.5%. And we're getting closer to 3, and with some of these other policy impacts, it may creep higher still. So again, a major watch area for us. As we've mentioned, the construction pipeline is stable, but we need to make sure that developers are able to pull permits to keep that development pipeline going, meeting other policy goals of the city, and also generate some additional tax revenue there. But I will say that major revenue growth is very unlikely before 2027. So over the rest of the biennium through 2026, we expect no less than this stable forecast to hold, again, with that additional uncertainty kind of providing that additional discomfort in our forecast.
So council members, as we think about these impacts and the uncertainty, one of the things that I've found in my career and looking at these issues is when you have a group of these, they usually take about 6 to 12 months after you reach stability for them to work their way through the economic system. Whether it is the time it takes to get the next shipping manifest, the production and brought over, whether it is how long it takes for the markets once you have lowered an interest rate and to get to permit and construction, there's a wave that will happen after that. What that really means for us is that bottom line there, which is we do not believe that major revenue growth is likely in any way before 2027. We also do not believe that even as bouncy as things are, we think when we kind of squint our eyes and look through the bounce, the trajectory that was set, the hard work that we did in our biennial budget that you brought forward in that conversation really has positioned us well. What we have found is that our forecasting for the out years has really given us that opportunity to say, no, we're tempered in the out years. What we've seen in some other jurisdictions who were more aggressive in 2008, 9, 10, or 30, you're looking at those out years, they thought it was going to come back faster. As we looked at the factors, our economists strongly advised us, and we brought forward to you, that we be tempered in that view. What we're now seeing from those other jurisdictions, including the state, who has raised revenue but still is having to look at doing cuts. Because we tempered and made some hard decisions for 25, 26, we're actually positioned really well. And we feel comfortable coming back to you to say, stay the course is our recommendation. We believe we've got a good handle on things. We're working very closely with the city manager and the leadership team to watch our spending, to see what's happening with direct tariff impacts, to really bring all of those factors together. And so we've got a really strong position that we think is solid and conservative. But we also believe that when we come back next year, we will have learned quite a bit. So as we think about things, our watch list items, we're going to be watching economic policy at the national as well as the state and local levels. We're going to watch the ongoing impacts of federal funding. We do believe this is an area of financial risk where we have anticipated grants and we may not be able to capitalize on them. And it's something that we have to wrestle with, and we'll need your help at some point. We believe in wrestling with that. The development pipeline, while there's a volume of permits that are coming through, they are a lot of the smaller permits, and there is a slowdown on the larger development, which you're hearing about tonight and took action on tonight. Inflation and commodity prices, again, really important for us to watch them because they have a direct impact on our city, our businesses, and on our residents. And so we're really tracking those components. Legislation impacts from Olympia and DC. Interestingly, there's some positive in all of this as well as negative. And so there's things that we have to watch on all sides. The labor market itself is one of those that we're seeing a lot of applicants who are looking to churn into spaces, but coming in from other parts of the country as well. And so we're seeing a really interesting labor market, and we're going to see how it comes out in the overall labor rates. And again, we are watching our 25-26 actual revenues and actual expenditures. We've taken a really tight look at that and are regularly looking at those data. Again, we will continue to view all of this based off of the guiding principles that you helped us get to last year, and we'll carry that forward. Final thoughts. The mid-buy, we believe that our anticipation is bringing forward technical only. We believe that it's just the cleanup stuff, some of the shifts. There's not going to be a lot of new work or new programs within it because the revenue does not provide an opportunity for that, and we're still in that hold steady space. We do not recommend altering our current financial plans. We think we've got a good course. We will continue to work with the city manager to tightly manage and monitor those. Our 2025 economic data is critical for 27, 28. We know that we have to keep a tight watch on this, and our economist Lee Chung is amazing in helping us keep a tight watch on that. She happens to be behind me. And staff leadership, we will continue to keep our eyes on that and make sure that you are well informed through this process. The flag on the right up there, just for those of you, I'm an old surf punk grew up on a surfboard, and when we see a yellow flag, it doesn't mean don't go surf, it just says be careful and cautious, and that's where we're at.
Can you please introduce the economist to us?
Lee Chong Chen, our city's economist. I'm going to get in trouble for this because she was not anticipating coming up tonight, but Mayor, council members, she is a gem, and we are truly blessed to have her on staff. Just an amazing individual. So,
Thank you. She's done a really good job. Thank you so much.
Again, here we are in the development calendar, and we're available for questions.
Okay, we'll start at this end. Councilmember Lee, any comments or questions?
Madam Mayor, excellent report, very insightful. So appreciate that, especially in such a tumultuous, period. But at the same time, I think you got your hands right on. I want to also acknowledge, thank you for being a economist. If you are right, that's very rare, right? So we're very lucky, we're fortunate, we got good staff. I always appreciate, the insightful things that you identify for us to look at. I do have a couple of questions. Employment, you mentioned, or unemployment.
Mm-hmm.
In the state of Washington, our unemployment rate is very low.
Correct.
How do you measure employment? The jobs available, how many people apply, right? The question is, if people don't apply, we may have less people employed. So what does that say? It's the same thing as there's plenty of jobs, but just a question.
Councilmember.
Because of COVID, many people have stayed home and they have not returned to work. They're still not returned to work. Is that the case or not? Answer me the question.
Councilmember, there are two measures of how they look at that. One is the number of applications for unemployment and the number of individuals who are of working age who are employed versus non-employed, and they use tax data against that. So it accounts for those factors, and we have a strong unemployment rate. So
it's a combination of both?
Yes, it is.
Okay, it's not one or the other.
Correct.
Okay, so it's comparable, accurate? Thank you. Do I have another one? You also mentioned it's hard when you mention balanced risk profile. That has something to do with priority, right? Balance costs and.
It has to do with the spending, but it also has to do with the revenue. Your guidance on what types of revenue we pursue as a city and the volatility versus the stable revenues. And so it applies to both sides of that. And so we're cautious and thoughtful, but we're not afraid of risk.
Okay, final one. Labor market. Labor market has changed, it's been changing, shifting. As we see even recently, the high-tech industry are having a lot of labor market adjustments because of AI, stuff like that. How do we break that up for the city of Bellevue on the east side where we are very dependent on high-tech industries?
We actually don't go into individual company level statistics. And there are a lot of different pieces that go with the layoffs that you hear about or the job cuts that you hear about in the news. They don't always necessarily hit our market. Some of those are national or international counts. Some of them are very local. We actually don't track down to that level. So we don't look at that particular issue. What we do see is our vacancy rate as a city is recovering faster than our neighbors across the lake. We're seeing some positive indications that even with some of those changes that you're hearing about in the news, regardless of the reason, we're still seeing some strengthening of Bellevue's position. And that's a testament to the great work and great foundation that we've got.
This is the final one here. Residential housing market. Are people moving out, stabilized, or are we still having a high demand of residential housing?
I would offer
that
to you that
affected?
the number of transactions for sale of housing are down. We're not seeing a lot of product, and when it does come on the market, it sells at a higher price and it sells relatively quickly. Without new supply of housing, whether rental or owner occupancy, coming in the pipeline and not a lot of it coming, that's going to continue to be a challenge. We are a landlocked community that we have these growing global partners as well as our local businesses that need workforce nearby, and it continues to be a persistent challenge that I believe our Office of Housing is working very hard to help build the plan for.
Is it a good sign or a bad sign or neutral sign?
I'm going to have to say neutral, because it's where we've been. So.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the presentation. Also, just want to commend the two of you and your team and our wonderful economist under the leadership of our city manager for your deep understanding of the city's finances and how carefully you use that knowledge in the creation of our current budget. Also appreciate the collaborative approach that my council colleagues took during the budget process last fall. I think that we worked together and helped craft a very solid budget. And it's all the more clear to me that we took the right approach last fall, and the budget that we passed is serving us well today. It may not have been the budget we wanted, but it was the budget we needed. The budget we passed last fall acknowledged that we were in uncertain times and that it wasn't clear what was ahead of us. We knew things were going to be challenging, and we planned for that. And while we might have preferred to have some more discretion to program some additional investments, we remain in a solid, stable financial situation that we can continue to build on. And I think that the same cautious approach that we took last fall should be maintained as we head into the mid-biennium budget process later this fall. I would like us, however, to consider deploying money from the Council Contingency Fund to support community-based organizations that serve our community by supporting folks traumatized by the chaotic, unlawful immigration enforcement policies of the current administration. And we have community members here in Bellevue being terrorized by the federal government, and I'd like us to find some ways to help them out. I hope we can talk more about that in the coming weeks. And while we may need to hold the line through the mid-buy, we can't remain in a constant holding pattern if we want to maintain the things that we have built, like our parks, roads and sidewalks, utilities, and so forth, and also be ready to make some careful strategic investments to support the growth that is coming to our city. And while we always need to carefully maintain a strong financial foundation, it's clear that we can't rely on the federal government to come through with financial support that has already been promised, let alone any needed additional support. And while we got some support from Olympia in the last challenging session, what we did get fell short of what we needed. And we are headed into new territory at the state and federal level, and we need to be ready to react. We have to find more ways to carefully navigate our own financial future. So a couple of questions, and if you have the answers tonight, that's great, but we could follow up. Just kind of curious, as you analyze our financial outlook, can you speak to the impact it has on our capital program generally? And specifically, could you address the impact on our transportation needs? I see transportation needs continuing to increase and the time to act here. Again, if you have something to share tonight, that's great, and if not, happy to follow up.
Councilmember, very briefly, we had the privilege of joining the Transportation Commission just last week as they're wrestling with the Transportation Facilities Plan and shifting it to a longer time frame. As what we saw and the choices that had to be made during the budget process, we slowed down some of our general fund investment in capital but we used the investment waterfall to prioritize it. So we really honed in on maintenance of assets before building new. And that was an important feature that came through our last process, as well as paying for even the $250 million worth of debt that we've taken to build, both through TIFIA and through bonds, to build out the transportation infrastructure that got in front of the Spring District. Great financial choices by the city. Now they're looking at how to pace some of that out and see how things recover. And there will be opportunities, I think, to explore different ways to fund some of the future opportunities to bring that back on track as we stabilize and begin to grow again. So there's a great opportunity, and your commissions are already hard at work on that.
Okay, good, yes, and just, I think, kind of following on that, I'd like to ask you too, to look at our existing tools, which I know you do, and maybe also some new tools that we could use to fund our range of needs and achieve our priorities, and maybe bring some ideas back in the fall as we kind of continue the conversation. So again, thanks for the update. It was really good work. I have a lot of confidence in you and your team, and I'm sure that you'll continue to look at the impacts on our upcoming budget and keep us posted, and just look forward to getting on this as we move into the later part of the year and the new year. So thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mayor.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I just wanted to first plus one Councilmember Hamilton on we should use our council contingency as the best way as we can for our community. So plus one, great job. Thank you, John, Evan, our economists, and the whole finance and asset management team. Very amazing job on making complex economic indicators and topic more easier for us to understand and have a clear big picture. I really appreciate your transparency. That has been your kind of the key character of the whole finance and asset management team, so I appreciate that. And I think this kind of monitoring, as Councilmember Hamilton mentioned, is the key to make us responsible and accountable for our community. I have maybe 3 wish lists that I would love to see, and then I have 2 questions. I know even you mentioned that this is a very global lens. That's how you started. I would love to see Bellevue specific economic data, or local commercial vacancy, all of the one that you know, construction activity, business license, trends, and all of those. I think combination of that with the global gives a better picture for me to understand. I think I asked that before. I would love to see some scenario-based what-if scenarios. What happen if interest rates stay above 4%? What happen if all of those variables become the worst? What happens if all of those variables doesn't happen and magically we are going to be a great economy? I think we should do some scenario-based to show us, are we prepped for the worst case scenario maybe. And I think the last wish list that I have is, I think we need to know and better understand what are these factors actually affect our residents. Like we talk about interest rate, we talk about market, inflation, but what are the changes that impact our homelessness rates, our housing stability, our social services? Like all of our metrics is very high level, and I don't even know what they do, but I think we need to combine that with some indicators that actually impact our resident that they are struggling. So I think that's like, what is our small business stability? Like what is the correlation of all of this stuff that you are telling to us, and do we have a small businesses impact in our community? So that's something that, these are all wish lists. So our economist here, she's listening to us. So now 2 questions. They are both AI related. Are you guys using AI to do predictive economic modeling? And is AI helping us on that? Is yes, no?
I could answer that. We are not currently using AI for our financial forecasting. There is an internal staff pilot to start exploring some Microsoft Copilot options that is kicking off here actually this week. But for our financial forecasting, we aren't there at this point. We also have a financial system that is 21 years old. So it is not AI ready, might be the best way to put that.
So I know we have an AI human being sitting here. That is, you said 1%. That's unheard of. But I think there are many companies are using AI, and I encourage we improve our 21 years old system to be match AI, and we incorporate AI to get all of those triggered and be more dynamic and just know what's going on. The other AI question is, we know AI is kind of this increasing efficiency and automation in labor market is going to change some of the taxes that we receive, maybe B&O tax, maybe sales tax, because they are all tied to human employment. Are we forecasting the AI impact in our modeling in the labor market?
I think we'll need to get back to you on that, but our tax revenues, so B&O is based off of gross receipts, not off of labor. So we've got gross receipts as a major component of it. So think of the dollars that are flowing through. So that actually isn't affected on the labor side. Where you might start to see it might be in the types of buying power or the types of purchasing. So it might become reflected in our sales taxes. It's really kind of interesting because as the state has just added services of certain types into the sales tax, and we're trying to learn the impacts of those things, those may actually turn out to be a countervailing bump positively in the long run. But it does change B&O classifications and the type of revenues and what people have to pay. So we are looking at all of those pieces, and they are going to be real impacts. But it is stuff that we're watching because we have to pay attention to it because we think it's going to affect our tax environment. And we've already had a number of conversations trying to dig in. And in fact, we've had conversations with economists at the county and in other locations to really make sure that we're all thinking about the right things in this process. Back on the other issue of bringing AI more into our operations, because we're looking at our business transformation right now, we actually think we're perfectly timed because the first generation of enterprise resource planning systems had AI in them. It's now the second and third that we really want because the first generation, you want to throw those away anyways. They were on the hype cycle and you want to catch it as it's coming back up, right? So we're really excited about our timing for being able to capitalize on that in the right time frame and in the right ways. So we think we're actually really positioned, and it is at the forefront of our thinking.
Thank you so much for answering all of my 2 questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. So can I ask the economist if it's too late to buy NVIDIA? I'm just kidding. Don't put that in the minutes. Okay. So I wanted to drill down a little bit into some of the federally promised funds that we are not anticipating receiving, which was particularly the community development block grants. And I think we promised them in advance to a few organizations. Do you know how much funding we're talking about with that?
So CDBG represents for the biennium about $4 to $4.5 million.
I think it's 4.5 million a year.
4.5 million a year, correction. So it's more like 9 million for the biennium.
That's a lot of money that's not going to go out. So when we're talking about if we have a council contingency, which we pre-spent, if you will remember, at the end of this year, that will be something to consider. And there is a process for how we spend that money and how we deliberate on it. But that's a lot of money for a human service agency not to receive. What is our human service budget? It's not that big.
It's approximately double that.
Yeah, that's, oh my gosh. So anyway, I'm very concerned about the impacts of that. So I hope that the city is evaluating the impacts of those funds not being delivered and what we might do to compensate that. But other than that, very impressive work here, and I really appreciate the update. Councilmember Suma Deweria.
Thank you. First of all, I'm really excited. This is the first thing we have in 2 weeks where I missed being here. So thank you for showing us some data, and I'm glad we're here. A couple observations, and I just have a few questions. So for the method, I think that because our economist is so reliable with the data, with the 1%, I think that creates a very clear resilience to the volatility coming to our way. And I think that, I think as the market's very, it's all over the place. We don't know, the news is changing all the time. I think stay calm is, like you said, is the best way to not shifting the change. In the worst scenario, if something crazy happens, let's just think of worst scenario, what does the runway look like for our city?
So number one, we actually have strong reserves. So council member, in our financial plan, we actually have documented a whole series of different types of reserves, including a 60-day reserve. So we have 60 days worth of our full operating costs. Plus there are a variety of other reserves that we could tap should revenues disappear. We're very careful and thoughtful. Now, in addition to that, the city manager also looks at the question of, do we need to change our spending patterns, and is regularly asking questions of us and has access to those data so that she's in a position with our leadership as a whole to be able to advise and make decisions on the spending side of that equation. We've actually just updated our internal dashboards to track and are having much more comprehensive, transparent information available to our leadership to make sure that we're seeing what's happening in our spending and in our revenues on a regular basis. So we're really keeping a tight watch on that so that we don't have suddenly no runway. So we're trying to keep our eyes out there so we have the ability to land where we need to.
How often is it monitored, the reporting status?
Oh, I'm in it daily.
Yeah, continuous.
Very good.
Sorry, it's kind of how I start my day and sometimes how
Love
I
it.
end it. I'm a little bit of a geek.
But something important to mention is a lot of the taxes that we receive them 2 months after the charges were incurred. So if you made a purchase at the mall, we don't see that in tax revenues for another 2 months. So we are tracking all sorts of data out there in the market. We're tracking what other economists are saying. We're talking with our colleagues at other jurisdictions in real time, but we may not see that data right away. And we want to make sure that we may not be reacting to just 1 month of data. So it is kind of a bit of a difficult dance where we see a lot of activity in the market. We may see some turmoil, but we don't want to necessarily say the Bellevue's experience is going to be X, Y, or Z.
So in March, by way of example, when we were hearing about pre-tariff buying, we were actually seeing a dip in our sales tax. We didn't see the pre-tariff buying show up in our sales tax until May. But we knew it, and we were prepared for it, and we were watching. And this is that bouncy, like it's going like this, but we're still watching that line through, which is giving us confidence. And so we're using all of the tools available to make sure that we're monitoring it, to be prepared for that.
And this may be a bigger scale thinking. So like, if that does trigger the contingency, like, or the emergency, do we have a plan where like every department, including the council members, like how, like if we have a plan can come together to save, like, ideas like that, like it just randomly, like do we have idea where we can save like cost, or like, I don't know, instead of having a parking validated, we walk over to Million Bar. So like it just, like, do we have something like that?
I could speak to that. I was here during COVID in early 2020. That was a situation where the city's leadership team comes together, assesses the situation, and figures out what is the first, second, and third line of defense. And hopefully you just have to take the first one or a second one. You don't have to touch the third one. But we do have ongoing conversations about what is non-essential, truly non-essential, what is non-contractually obligated, where do we have flexibility. So we try to stay nimble in that space. And we are able to be, and thankfully we have a diverse economy, so we're not dependent on any one resource, which makes us a lot more resilient. So we have a lot of flexibility and resiliency in our revenue and resource structures, but we also have a lot of expenditure spending levers to pull as well.
Yeah, I think the transparency really helps us to just unite together to help. Another question is about the labor and consumer confidence, because it dropped 25%. And then with the labor cost, so I think I would say, was it safe to say a small business would be hit, both of them, because our labor cost is increasing whilst people are spending way less?
What we're seeing with consumer confidence is that people are slowing down their spending in certain categories, but in other categories, services, they're not slowing down at the same rate. And so we're seeing differing things. And so we're watching the individual markets. When it comes to labor, what we're seeing is it is dependent upon the type of labor. Right? And there are certain aspects where there's more folks in the market, in some of the financial and technical and the more traditional office work. We're seeing the market draw in from other parts of the country, and so there's a lot of applicants, which is actually keeping the labor rate down. And what we're finding is kind of the entry level, there's a gap in workforce, and then there's a few technical areas where there are gaps, some of which had been met through broader immigration. And if you think about the fact that we've got a lot of tech here, they've really relied on those visas bringing in, and those are dried up right now. And so it leaves different kinds of weird pockets. So my answer to you, council member, is it depends. Truly factors we have to watch, and we will see them in different ways. There's one other little side oddity. When we see prices go up, there's a side benefit. Sadly, our sales tax goes up with it because we benefit from the rising price. And it's one of the reasons why it's a challenging revenue for us, is it does not look at ability to pay or affordability, but it hits all people just based off of a price basis. But it's the tool that we have, and one of the very limited number of tools that we have from the state.
Thank you. I think like my rationale is because I think we have to do, other than human services, which I am passionate about, also the protecting, supporting the small businesses, just in case another wave of COVID hits. As a small business owner, I'm experiencing both sides. So I think I'm not alone. So I think that, being proactive, thinking about even more innovative ways, like partner with Visit Bellevue or BDA, have like way more marketing funnels helping the small business at a low cost would be really helpful. As a creative way thinking, just being ahead of the curve. Because what I'm seeing is there's customers spending, going out to eat instead every day of the week, they're doing once a month. That's a big hit for hospitality especially. So I think if you could share some data with me on the labor difference and then where spending, if we have the data, would be really helpful. One last question I have is about the tax growth in dollars. Because I'm seeing that, as property tax, there's the 1% cap, right? But as we're looking at the numbers, to 2034 is actually tapered down. Can you tell me, can you help me to understand,
It's
how
a super
does it work?
easy answer. That's at a point where one of our levies expires, and we aren't allowed to show that the levy is renewed in our forecasts. So you see the dip in those out years because the levy goes away. You can anticipate that there will be discussion. That is actually one of the two parks levies that's expiring that you're seeing on that sheet. That will be a question as we go into 27, 28, because that's a 29 expiration. And so how do we want to approach that relative to our overall challenges? So that's what that dip is very specifically.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Bernard.
Thank you. Great presentation, really interesting. Also great to see your confidence on staying the course, which means you feel confident that we're doing something right and the forecasts are working. Forecasting is not trivial. It's a exercise. Sometimes I feel like no matter how good we are, there's always a chance that we're going to get it wrong. So, kudos to the work done so far. I really appreciate it. It's my first real visibility into the process and the thinking that we've done. So I'm really inspired by the great work that the team is doing. A couple of really quick comments and a couple of maybe questions that you don't have to answer now, but thoughts. I'm really supportive of the idea. So a lot of great commentary already from my peers in the council. Really supportive of the idea of looking at the contingency funds. I don't know how large that bucket is and how much is pre-spent, as the mayor said, but using that to provide support to the most vulnerable opportunities we see within the city, whether it's the block grants that are not going through human services or other places where there is the most need within the city. I think it's really great, very supportive. There was a comment from the deputy mayor about AI usage. I'm also glad that you're not early adopters in this process and you're waiting for stabilization, because this is as good as it gets in terms of the inputs as the output you get. And so even if we do go that route, really running in parallel is very wise in this process. And then one thing that you mentioned triggered a thought about, sales tax revenues going up, also tariff-based buying and, maybe heavier buying than anticipated. It's a risky source of revenue and non-predictable. I also feel like the reversals and higher rates of return are hitting us now and are going to hit us as people realize that the tariffs are not as impactful in terms of their impact to inflation and availability, commodity pricing. So we have to be careful about that and not bake in any of those as wins in terms of revenue. So those were just three thoughts that triggered. In terms of three sort of open-ended questions for me, one, I think Councilmember Sumitra talked about it, reserve funds. So do we have a specific percentage that we allocate for reserve funds? And do you see that as something you should be thinking about differently in the level of uncertainty we have in our capital markets right now?
Our reserve funds, we actually have a longstanding policy, and it's based off of really national best practices on the size. In my career, I've spent a lot of time on reserves. From that standpoint, I look at our reserves and we have strong reserves that are held in the right way, and they're different types of reserves for different kinds. So they have different triggers associated with them or different purposes. And it's really, it's some art as well as science on how you have the right size buckets. We did a little bit of cleanup in this last cycle to make sure that we had a very clear articulation of all of those reserves. We feel really positive, and we have not yet had to tap any of those reserves. And when we tap them, the city manager also has a communication and an engagement with you when we go into that space. And then we begin the process, if it's a short term or a midterm, of how we respond and react in that space. We are always looking at the question of, do we have the right types of reserves in the right levels? And we rely on, because we've diversified the types, we rely also on the specific areas of expertise throughout the city to help set those right levers and the right triggers.
Yeah, and something I would add, we also have a few highly specific reserves for things like health benefits. We have a couple of those where we work with our benefit manager and an actuary to look at really sophisticated statistical models to make sure that we are setting aside the right amount of money for some of our most sensitive spending, like healthcare benefits.
Perfect, because that was going to be the heart of my question is, do we make sure we have reserves for essential services that we can't afford to lose or not lose? It'll be a reprioritization effort at that point, but the level of comfort we have knowing the reserves are there and set aside for these critical services is reassuring. Talking of diversification, just curious on thoughts. This is an open-ended, and you can also punt this question to another time, but have we thought about diversification of our revenue streams in a meaningful way? And what would be one or two or three things there that you think come to the top of your mind on that?
Council member, I would love to spend some time with you and with all of the council as we get into that question.
Yeah.
It is an age-old challenge, and one of the biggest things that we have is we are limited in the types of revenue by the state of Washington, and the state legislature authorizes our capacity for revenues. And so it's always a dance, and we're doing everything we can to squeeze every nickel or opportunity out of different types, and we'll be glad to spend some time with you and with all of the council as we wrestle with some of these bigger issues coming in.
I would definitely volunteer to spend some time and maybe more education first, and then maybe we can collaborate even. But I would love to understand your thought process there and the limitations you have from a state's perspective.
Our pleasure.
Last thing really quickly for me is, I'm not sure, someone on the dais had mentioned scenario-based planning. I think it was the deputy mayor. I'm curious in that situation, do we have established trigger points for something? Right now you're saying stay the course. What would be our trigger points, and do we know them in terms of the indicators where certain scenarios will play out, and we should know what those trigger points are where we make changes that are meaningful or robust in nature?
Well, we, from a staff perspective, have some rules of thumb. We don't have formalized triggers now. Should we? Yes. Is that part of our maturing process? Yes. We have to be very careful during a time of uncertainty not to overreact as well. Right? And so that's part of this. And I'm going to look back to you. One of the things I'll also encourage you that even in times of uncertainty, we as a city have opportunities that will come before us. And so there's a push and a pull. We actually haven't gone through that process. Should we? Yeah, it's going to take us some time to do that. It's on our list of many things. But I'll also come back to Councilmember Lee and the balanced risk profile. We are cautious and thoughtful, but we also take the opportunity, and your guidance has really led us to thinking about some of those major impacts or major opportunities where we're reinvesting back in the community and being a leader in some of those capital investments when they come. So it's an interesting tug and push and pull, as we get into that conversation, but it'll be something.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add there is we have had votes of confidence from rating agencies, S&P being one of them, ensuring that we have a AAA bond rating for our debt. And the write-up that is provided in describing our financial position is always glowing. We are a standout by most metrics, if not all metrics. So we have that kind of stamp of approval, that kind of perfect credit score, so to speak. So that is something we pride ourselves on. And one of the things that they evaluate us on are our budget policies, but also our financial policies, reserves, and how we're being prudent with those things.
Yeah, totally agree, and very proud of this process. But I think establishing them should preclude us from being caught unawares. I think that's what I'm getting at. And then also just want to take 10 seconds to acknowledge the incredible amount of thought and leadership that's gone in prior to even my time in the council. I saw the guiding principles of professionalism and accountability. They're really great. So awesome work for everyone involved.
Thank you. Thank you. Great presentation. There are two written reports in the packet. One is Intergovernmental Relations monthly report as of June 30th, 2025, and the other one is a midpoint check-in on the critical areas ordinance update process and scope, which I encourage you to read if you haven't already. We will reconvene on July 22nd. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.